Her and EU, a European podcast on gender equality, brought to you by the Martens Centre with Loredana Teodorescu.
Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode of Her and EU, a podcast on gender equality and women's role in the society. I am Loredana Teodorescu and our special guest of today is Eva Maydell, member of the European Parliament, where she's part of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, and also the president of the European Movement International. Eva, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Loredana and the Martens Centre for having me. Very happy to be joining you today.
Thank you. So let me start with a personal question. So despite your relatively young age, you've already had an impressive political career. You hold different leading positions. So looking back, what have been the ingredients of your success and how being a woman has affected your career?
Look, first of all, I'm very happy we are talking in March around the days of the International Women's Day, because I think it's important to put an emphasis on what women as professionals, as what women as moms can bring into society. I just returned from New York, where I attended the General Commission on Women, and it had a specific twist on tech. Why I'm bringing this is because these are the topics that I work quite a bit here in the European Parliament on. And I think to a very big extent, when I started and when I got elected at the age of 28, it was determined, my experiences from before kind of gave me the force and the support to work on something more innovative and more different. Tech was not a topic for politicians. And perhaps it was, luck. I mean, I would like to say it's luck, but anyone knows that you need to work very hard every day to be in a position of luck, perhaps, and to be elected at a young age. But then you need to work towards your goals, and you need to very well craft what sort of goals this should be. So perhaps I was... I never actually thought that I should work in tech because I would probably be one of the few women in the room talking tech. As you know, I'm not able to code or be able to produce an app, but I would like to understand the newest challenges before us. I would like to understand the upcoming industrial and technological revolutions and prepare society as a whole for those challenges. And I think being a younger woman in parliament definitely puts a spotlight on you, but I would not want to think about it just as a spotlight, but more like giving you the space and the opportunities to explore topics that you truly care and are interested about and build on them. So I've been very fortunate to be supported by men and women on the way that see the potential of someone that has less experience, but someone that has creative ideas on certain topics.
Then following up on that, you mentioned that you are working a lot on promoting technology. You are working on digital policies. As you said, this was not so common for women and for women parliamentarians. But in the end, there is also a strong connection between those topics and women. And I'm wondering how innovation, technology, how education in the digital age can help achieving gender equality and also can help us promoting the empowerment of women and girls. And what are, in your opinion, the priorities? What's the role you can play in this area?
I think women are, to a certain extent, one could say, being left behind once again in the face of societal and economic shifts as big data becomes increasingly valuable for our society and economy. And around the world, Europe, of course, included, low level of literacy would remain still a huge challenge. Another challenge is the digital literacy and the lack of it And this only helps to widen the gap. And this is why I believe increasing the skills across society, but especially among women, it's very important. And this is why teaching skills that are, more technical sometimes will be important as reading and writing and the ability to do that. This is why in my work I've championed this through the establishment of a non-profit called Education Bulgaria 2030. I've done so as the supporter of public libraries, coding schools, but also more importantly as a core principle in the legislation that I work on, where I've always included the possibility for enhancing the skills of citizens. As I said earlier, I'm not an engineer. I can't code, but I very well know how it feels to be the only woman in the room talking tech. And I would ideally want to see those rooms full of women talking tech and full of also men, but at an equal footing. But to achieve that, we would need more investment, better infrastructure, and of course, enhanced skills. And I think a way forward and a solution to that is to see more public-private collaboration. The nonprofit that I've mentioned that we've set up, Education Bulgaria 2030, I think is a prime example of this type of collaboration where policymakers can set the path and goals, but it's through working with civil society, with business, with government to implement those goals and to achieve tangible changes.
Thank you. You mentioned already several concrete initiatives that we can take in order to fill this gap when it comes to women and digital skills. Of course, it's about education. It's also about funds and promoting synergies among different actors. I think that this is essential also if we look at the future of the employment. In a world dominated by artificial intelligence, by machine learning. Of course, we don't want to leave so many women behind. And this brings me to another very important topic you are dealing with, which is artificial intelligence. You've been indeed the Industry, Research and Energy Committee rapporteur on the Artificial Intelligence Act, which is a milestone, I would say, the first ever general law on artificial intelligence, which tries to address the risks of artificial intelligence, but at the same time, I think it's important because it positions the European Union to play a leading role globally on this topic. So first of all, I'm wondering, how are you trying to ensure and balance the new technology with safety, and how it's important, for instance, looking at this kind of topic to take into consideration also a gender perspective?
I mean, I'm glad you're bringing this up, as we are indeed currently at the negotiations and at a tipping point for the AI Act. One aim and a main aim of the AI Act is to tackle the so-called black box phenomenon of AI systems. That means we need to understand when they make a decision, how did they arrive to making this decision? If it comes to women applying to a job, AI system can scan their CV, and how can we know whether that woman potentially did not get a job is a result of a discriminatory AI system? Or if an AI system decides a woman should not have an access to a loan, for example, did it decide that on the basis of her gender? So we are considering all this sort of questions. And we try to tackle the problem that discrimination that could potentially occur against women, but also people of different race, age, nationality. It's tackled because this is a horizontal law, meaning it would apply across sectors. And some sectors like employment are considered high risk. And this means they would need to go through more extensive checks, through more obligations in order to deliver results. I think it's important for us to have this explainability principle, to have AI being able to explain how it reached to a certain decision when it comes to the high risk cases. And especially when it's used in the workplace, at schools, at banks, we need to know why this decision has been taken. Of course, I think it is fair to explain and remind that no system is without bias. AI is only as good as the data that it has. And unfortunately, we have to acknowledge the reality that a lot of the data that is out there is already biased due to people's own preconceived notions, perceptions, and stereotypes that exist. But I also am of the belief that the more advanced the technology is, it can offer the ability to be more accurate, nuanced, and to quick, much faster errors and to fix those errors. So I think we have to look at both the positive and the negative effects of AI when it comes to female empowerment. And the AI Act has prompted those discussions and issues to be, so to say, re-examined. And I think this is a good thing.
Indeed, I think it's a very complex but also fascinating policy area. And then maybe more generally speaking, and looking at our future, you said that there is no Green Deal without the tech deal. So how is AI instrumental to a sustainable future?
Well, I think AI and other new technologies are the ultimate enabler of sustainable future, and the sustainable future that we envisage as a society, as communities, as businesses, but also as the European Union, because we've put very ambitious goals ahead of us. About a year and a half ago, I had the idea to set up a group called AI for Sustainability. And the idea was simple. We wanted to meet with experts, researchers, representatives of member states to learn on all topics related to energy efficiency, renewable energy, and new breakthrough technologies in these areas. When we started the grouping, a lot of the many existing challenges, specifically the ones brought on us through the war that is happening at our borders, were not out there. The energy cost, the cost of living crisis, I think has forced us to rethink those dependencies and our future sustainability strategy. But it has also inserted a certain amount of pragmatism and realism in the way we approach topics such as the Green Deal and those strategic plans. And this is why learning from the knowledge of this group, I think a crucial approach to reaching net zero is doing the same things we already do, but in a much more efficient ways. We need those new tools, technologies, especially also supported by AI, but not only, that exist. They need to be scaled, and they can help us operate in all these economic sectors while consuming less energy. And it would be important to start learning about them, as I said, to scale them, to invest in them in order to be able to put them to use. We cannot any longer speak in silos. It is not just a digital deal and a green deal. Digital on the one side and energy on the other side. This transition needs to be integrated together. We have been talking about the transition for so long, yet now we are seeing more and more the real world examples and why this is necessary. If we want to achieve our ambitious targets, we cannot do so by only putting new strict regulation in place on every single sector. It's a two-sided approach. The other side is to listen to the entrepreneurs, to the creators, and make sure we help them create the conditions to deploy those AI solutions throughout Europe and the world. And in this case, if we are to reach, just to sum up, the ambitious goals of the Green Deal, it will be technology that will get us there. So we have to put those investments in place to enable enable us to reach the Green Deal goals. So in that respect, no Green Deal without a tech deal indeed.
I think that you are doing great already in connecting tech, digital, entrepreneurs, education, women empowerment. These are all connected in a way, so they should not conceived in silos, of course. And this brings me back to your, let's say, personal story, because you are considered nowadays as an influential MEP, one of the youngest, but also ranked in many lists as one of the most influential politicians shaping Europe, one of the emerging change makers. So somehow you have a sort of responsibility. You have a powerful voice, you have an influential position. You are also coordinating this network of young members of the EPP group in the parliament. And I'm wondering, how are you trying to use this powerful voice today in order to advocate for more women and young women in politics? So how are you trying to create the space for them, or how are you trying to alleviate some of the obstacles?
By the way, I have an entire female team here in Brussels. It was by coincidence, but I'm glad that even in my closest vicinity, I can work with very professional, very capable ladies, and I believe we learn from one another. I very much believe in reverse mentoring and learning, irrespective of the age and the position. I do learn a lot from them, and I hope I also can support them in their path. Speaking of reverse mentorship, I am inspired by many women that I currently work with. Some of them in similar positions as mine, others leading countries or parliaments or parties or institutions. I do learn from them on the way they take decisions, on how they balance professional and personal responsibilities, and how they operate to what, to a very big extent, often can feel a man's world in politics. And in this respect, my door has always been open, and I'm always there for an advice to any women professional. And I use even sometimes short interactions to explain to women that talking to one another, having role models, being able to have mentors can help us a lot to work on perhaps some of our weak spots. At least throughout the years, I think one of the weak spots in the beginning of one's career is confidence. Another area where we need to learn to be more effective is how to plan and set up your next goals and aims and systematically work towards them. Very often we've seen things are not based on meritocracy. So apart from being excellent in what you do, you need to be strategically well positioned to be considered for a next job, or to be considered for another type of area you want to excel, and so on and so forth. But also we need to learn how to balance our professional and personal life, and talking to people that have gone through that and giving you suggestions and advices, it's very important. There are a number of academies and master classes to support women in business. It would be good to have similar setup, ideas and projects and programs to encourage more women to join politics, to give them, and inform how they could be part of a political system, and give them the tools to be prepared. Why I say this is important is because if one looks at various surveys, one would understand that, first of all, politics is not a very appealing profession for both men and women. Lately, one could see the types of hate one encounters, both online and offline, bullying, and so on and so forth. So I think giving a good training to both women and men that want to join politics, it's important, but providing them with the tools and ways to navigate the very complex and very often unwritten, so to say, rule book of how to succeed in a political environment are important. important to motivate those considering a career in politics.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eva, for your inspiring words, first of all, and then for your time and insights. And thank you to the Martin Center for making this podcast possible. And thank you all for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you.
That was today's episode of Her and EU. Subscribe to our podcast for more.